Hello everyone, welcome to Straight Talks F1. Finally, all car launches are done. Pretty anticlimactic and a sedate car launch week, I would say. Given there were the top 5 teams who were going to launch their cars, it's been quite sedate. Video reveals, they're just dropping pictures, at best just short launches behind closed doors. It did not really make sense, but that's how it's been. Mercedes did it quite nonchalantly, just the big three talking out there Lewis, George, and Toto. So it felt weird directly seeing that Mercedes car right in front of your eyes, no shenanigans, no marketing mania. Ferrari also just dropping a 1 minute video out of nowhere. Of course, they had announced it that they'll be dropping at a particular point of time, 11 a.m. GMT. But after that, people expected more out of it. People said, like last year, we had a shakedown in Fiorano, it was a live event. Perhaps it was all due to the complaints fans often say. Just show the car, just show the car. So teams may have got together saying, I think this year we should do it. Just show them the cars. No marketing shenanigans. No prolonged talks and speeches. Only few teams would have disagreed on it. Sauber because they had the rebrand. Red Bull obviously because they are a marketing machine. So why not? And anyways, McLaren had their launch like in January. So they had showed their livery already. It was just a case of revealing their car. One thing I thought about maybe this week was such a sedate one in terms of car launch hype was because of the Cristiano Ronaldo situation. I think F1 stakeholders might have told all teams, whoever was remaining to reveal their car, that the Horner saga is going on. If you do an open door media launch, that would invite a lot of questions about the situation. Obviously, Red Bull were going to do it, but that's Red Bull's call. Other teams don't want to get in on that chatter. So I think maybe that might be the reason Horner himself just plainly denied all those allegations and there's the investigation going on. So yeah, that's something I'll just touch upon in the conclusion. But let's look at each of the teams first, starting with Aston Martin. So Aston Martin, same livery, the car is a little bit different, evolution of their last year's concept. But the livery, why change something that ain't broke? So it makes sense. Just the shade of green, they've changed it a little bit. But besides that, overall, that livery looks great. And the most important thing is, that's the way to inculcate carbon fiber in your livery. Like, way to go, Aston. They have ensured all the visible angles from the side, from the front, everywhere there is color visible except from not the marketable shots of the car, like the top of the car. No one sees an F1 car from the top, and they've ensured that all the carbon fiber that they want to keep, they've ensured that is only visible from the top angle, which is the top of the side pods. No one sees a car from the top. Yes, under the side pod, top of the side pod, the areas that are not visible, there is carbon fiber, but they've inculcated it very smoothly. It's not jarring to the eyes like the Alpine. Right there in your face, there's so much black carbon fiber. It looks like a very much Aston Martin machine. On the technical side, a lot of changes. They've called it an evolution of last year's concept, but they've changed the concept in some areas too, especially at the rear suspension. Starting at the front, they have a slot gap like Red Bull had. Most of the teams have chosen for that slot gap in the front wing to have better airflow. I'm not an engineer. From what I understand, that has better airflow. The research I have done on it, many parts are new, they say. One of those new parts is the rear suspension. They have switched to a push rod suspension at the rear. It's aerodynamically more efficient, as James Key said at the Sauber launch. And this is due to the Mercedes deal they have. Mercedes supplies Aston Martin with the gearboxes and engine. So the entire setup at the rear of Aston's car is inherited from Mercedes. So the push rod suspension is something that's there on the Mercedes too. So more or less on both suspensions, the front and the rear, it's more of a geometry change. At the rear, it's a complete concept change from pull rod to push rod. And the side pod radiator inlet, it's a more letterbox style one that Red Bull introduced last year, which now they have abandoned. But for Aston, this car upgrade is very important given it decides the future of their driver. Fernando Alonso is open on the driver market at the end of this year. He's a free agent. He has an option extend his contract for 2025. But given the situation of the driver market, it's very difficult for Alonso to not be there. Given Mercedes have an open seat, Hamilton's not there. He said he's the only world champion available on the grid. Verstappen is under contract. Hamilton is of course signed with Ferrari. He's the only world champion available at the end of 2024. Just in case Mercedes are thinking about that. Because that is the dilemma. How do you replace a driver of Hamilton's caliber? As I mentioned in the previous 2 episodes. Alonso's quite willing to switch away from Aston if they don't perform, and that's very crucial for Aston. Overall, they need to ensure that they have a good season in 2024. If they don't take a step forward with that car, Alonso is not going to extend. So from Aston Martin's perspective, they need to develop that car well, which has been the Achilles heel in the last season. They were not able to develop that car in season. It may be due to their infrastructure facilities not being up to the mark. This year they have got that factory campus working well. They've got the wind tunnel coming online later this year. Maybe that helps because the in-season development was the reason last year they slipped up. Second fastest initially, and then they finished P5 in the standings. So they need to be improving on bringing better upgrades, and that will help take them a step forward and be that second fastest team and take a step towards the championship and winning races. Ideally, they should aim at that, be the second fastest team. They cannot afford anything lower than that. Maybe win races. If they can win races and give Alonso a taste of that blood, then he'll be tempted to stay on. And even for Fernando, Aston is his first priority, as he has said, and he'll look at that. It's not given that he's going to switch to Mercedes, even at the slightest of inconvenience, which is very Fernando like. But still, it's a different situation than what was at Alpine. He will assess all the things going on at Aston and then take a call. It's not going to be an impulsive decision this time around. He cannot afford that. It's a crucial stage because even Mercedes is at the same crossroad as Aston. Alonso will be a key player in this driver market, and Aston Martin's performance is going to determine where does he focus. So let's see, for Fernando Alonso's sake, Aston Martin takes a step up this year. The car looks good. Hopefully it performs well too. Fingers crossed for Aston. Next up, Ferrari. The livery. Oh my god. It is so good. It is a work of art. It just gives that Lightning McQueen kind of vibe. You just look at it and go, ka-chow! Those white and yellow pinstripes with a brighter shade of red. Overall, it's a beautiful livery. The best, I would say, of the lot this year. Once again. And almost no carbon fiber visible. If they have carbon fiber on the red, it will be visible quite instantaneously. But that's not the case for most of the angles. Just the side-on angle towards the rear of the car, there is some black visible over there. But that's fine. So top of the side pod, just like Aston, they've ensured that the top of the car, the top of the side pod, they have the carbon fiber over there. But besides that, from all the visible angles, the marketable angles, no carbon fiber. And it's a beautiful livery. Coming to the car, they say it's a bit on the risky side. Ferrari are not saying it, but everyone else is. Because they've gone in the opposite direction to many of the concepts. It's like disagreeing with the rest of the grid, which is fine and it can work, but there's a fine line between stupidity and bravery, right? So the 95% change that they promised, they have stuck to that. Now the race reported that the SF24 is an outlier, mainly because their suspension is quite different. They have stuck to push rod at the front, which is fine, many teams have. But at the rear, they have stuck to a pull rod. And their technical director, Enrico Cardile, he said last year that suspension setup is overrated. And I don't understand, why do Ferrari have to pass such statements? There was once a time, Enzo Ferrari said, aerodynamics are for people who can't build engines. Today, after all these years, the engines are blowing up and aero is the thing they have to focus upon to compete and thrive in F1. So why to make such claims and then falter later on? Suspension setup is overrated. Then why is Adrian Newey focusing on it so much? Optimize it race by race, year on year. But either ways, the car is different. Hopefully the suspension gamble works. They've changed the geometry of it. They've changed the aspects on the gearbox and everything. So hopefully it works well in tandem. Leclerc and Sainz said it's giving a good feeling. That's what they said last year, and we know how all that aged. The handling of the car and the drivability is something Ferrari needs to focus upon. Hopefully they have resolved those issues for Leclerc and Sainz. They feel it's a step forward, but unless until we get to the races, we won't understand whether it's really a step forward and is it delivering or not. Last year, the race pace and the tire degradation were the two most important points that has been costing them for a while. If they can solve those two issues, challenging Red Bull at every race is possible. It's still a steep climb to challenge them for the championship. And 2024 anyways I don't feel would be a title challenge for Ferrari. 2025 is the realistic goal. Even that's a bit ambitious, I would say. 2025, 2026 is what I would say. 26 should be their goal, get back into championship contention. In the long term, given how dominant Red Bull is, that should be their chance. And they got Hamilton coming in next year. So focusing on building foundation for that would also be something Ferrari would think. Of course, writing of 2024 is not something they should do. But preparing a good foundation for next year, ensuring that the car takes the right steps, they hopefully don't go wrong in any sort of concepts or take a wrong step in development. 24-25, the next 2 years can be said as years of preparation. Get back into winning races, consistently be there on the podium, and then put on a full-on title assault in 2026. The regulations change, it's a reset, even Red Bull will start from ground zero. So yeah, fingers crossed Ferrari look at those things. This year, what is their prospect? As I said earlier, no title challenge I would say, unless they have found insane amount of pace over the winter. But even Red Bull would have found some sort of pace. So let's see if they can win races, which is what Leclerc is hoping. Then yeah, Ferrari would have a good season. Hopefully they would like to secure second, 4 more points, 500, 600 points, winning races. That would be a good season for Ferrari in 24. Fingers crossed, let's see. Are Ferrari fans gonna cry or smile come Bahrain and the rest of the 23 races? Now, what's up with McLaren? They did not do any launch as such, they just dropped the pics because they had revealed their livery a month ago almost. So there was nothing to show literally. They showed their car obviously, the MCL38. Still a lot of details were hidden, so nothing can be derived out of what all changes they have made to the car. There are some visible changes, but it's still difficult to understand how different that car will be from last year. And in terms of the launch, as I said, no marketing shenanigans, which is very un-McLaren like. They always have something going on, some celebrity coming in, or some sort of show put on in their car launches. There was nothing of that sort this year. But overall, from the livery launch last month till now, people have reported that the confidence at McLaren HQ is great and they seem to be in a much better position than last year. Last year, this time, it was chaos. They were literally backmarkers in the first few races. There was nothing to count home about. This year, they may start as the second fastest team easily. As I said, due to those things, maybe they're hiding stuff because they have got something to hide. But some things are right off the bat pretty clear. Pull rod at the front, push rod at the rear suspension. So that's all sorted. They are not changing on those things. The sideboard inlet is a bit more Red Bull like. Once again, teams catching up on Red Bull's concept while Red Bull is moving to something completely different. But overall, what's working for McLaren is the in-season development. And overall, their technical development does hit the sweet spot in terms of the structure they have now. 3-man lineup. They have Peter Prodromou who's looking after the in-season development. Then there's Rob Marshall who's come from Red Bull. And there's David Sanchez. Sanchez from Ferrari, he's looking after the overall car concept. So from the future perspective for 25-26, when the rules change, Sanchez's role is about that. Ensure that they choose the right development paths. Prodromou, as I said, looks after the in-season development, which is their strength I would say at the moment, given the way they developed last year. Took those huge step forwards to become the second fastest team. Makes sense that they would rely on the in-season development. That's what they've told for this year too, that they are going to rely a lot on the in-season development. bring in upgrades, and take that step forward. It may not be the second fastest car right from the word go in Bahrain, but as the season progresses, they would take those step forwards they want. And Rob Marshall is the guy, he's come from Red Bull. He's looking after the execution part of it. From Sanchez and Perdomo, all the concepts that come in, he puts them into execution. So it's good McLaren have figured out their structure in the technical team. Three folks doing a combined job. It's a very robust structure, and it's important because a team as big as McLaren, so many people working to systemize everything, to get everything under control, they need to have a strong structure like this. And yeah, that's been the secret behind their sudden rise, I would say. And yeah, overall, McLaren is in a great situation. Both their drivers signed up for long-term contracts. Oscar Piastri till 2026. Norris, just last month he extended his contract. Reportedly, it's still 2027 with options beyond that. Who knows? It's still unclear on the duration for how many years. It must be till 2027, and beyond that, hopefully he's got some exit clauses just if McLaren falters. But that's not looking as the case right now. It makes sense for him to stay at McLaren rather than go anywhere else. But he needs to iron out his mistakes too. It's not like he's delivering at the highest level possible to compete against Max Verstappen or Charles Leclerc or Lewis Hamilton. Lando Norris cannot falter like he has. He needs to pit for intermediate tires when the team asks him to, or else he's going to throw away victories as he did in Russia. But anyways, that's something very debatable always. His teammate Oscar Piastri, he's going to take a step forward this year for sure. And he needs to improve and be consistent. To keep Lando Norris on his toes and to ensure that McLaren have a good lineup, Piastri needs to be consistent and improve and be there to back Lando up. Last year he did a fantastic job. He is definitely a man for the future, champion for the future. So let's see. Now for McLaren with two solid young drivers, can they challenge Red Bull in 24? Unlikely, because I would say they have done the 0 to 90% journey, which is often easy to do. Getting from 90 to 100 is what is difficult. And McLaren are at that stage now. They have to get from 90 to 100, and that may take time. 25 or 26, again, like Ferrari, should be their target. Or now they should look at getting more podiums, consistently being there at the front, at the sharp end, fighting for wins, because Red Bull have a massive advantage. So to cut back at that, they will consistently need some big step ups like they did last year. And that's not possible always. So it would be interesting to see where McLaren end up this year. Ideally, they would want to finish second, which would be a good improvement from last year. Now, Mercedes, the big team, the champions, or ex champions, as I would say. Finally, they have dropped their bad concept completely. It's completely new car, the W15. And they showed it right away. They are like, oh, here's the car. They started their live launch event, which was a very short one. And they're like, here's the car. No cover, no nothing. And then there was a short talk from Toto, Hamilton, and Russell. So, yeah, quite direct, I would say. Too direct. But yeah, that's Mercedes. I think they would have also went. We got important things to do. Let's just show them the car and let's get on with it. About the livery, it looks good from the side on angle, but the front on, I'm not really a fan of. I think they missed the trick by not keeping it black. Black is part of their color scheme now, so they can use it as much as they can. Last year's livery was bang on, so I don't really understand why they had to bring their silver back. A silver and teal nose from the front on, the front on angle does not look good. Most people are liking it, which is great. From the side on, it's an absolute banger. It looks beautiful from the side on. The silver and the teal dissolving into the black, and then the stars come in. Lovely. The Ineos red is also blending in very well. But yeah, that's my opinion on the Mercedes livery. The front on angle is not something I'm a fan of. People are liking it. That's their choice. What matters is the car, how it performs, and there are visible changes on the car. As they said, it's a completely new car. They're going to overhaul it, and they've done it. The side pods much more Red Bull like, finally, and the biggest change is the rear suspension. As I mentioned earlier in the Aston Martin part, They have switched to push rod suspension at the rear, and their front is also push rod suspension. So something Mercedes trying to optimize as per the Red Bull concept. Hopefully the overall package works well together. At the front they have got a Red Bull like slot gap in the front wing. Now the front wing is something that's in talks a lot. So what Mercedes have done here is they need to have 4 flaps on the front wing, but the fourth flap, the ending part of it that connects to the nose, has been slimmed down, and it's almost like a thread like connection to the nose. So it's quite weird to see, and it feels like they've just got 3 flaps if you just look at the nose part. So that's something they've done for better airflow. But is it technically in the gray area or is it not allowed? FI will have a look at it. But yeah, Mercedes trying to be clever, get by something as they always do. Some sort of innovation, some sort of technical gray area they find out and get some performance advantage there. Hopefully it pays off for them. But again, the question is, will it work on track? Will it give them the performance gain they are looking for? Unless and until we see that, nothing can be said about Mercedes. And from an operational perspective too, they have got work to do. Pit stops are something they have been horrible at. Toto Wolff said the lack of good equipment, they did not invest in their pit stop aspects much. That's something that held them back. And on an average, their pit stop time has been over 3 seconds, which is very slow compared to Red Bull or McLaren. Even Ferrari improved last year on their pit stops. So that's something Mercedes need to work upon. Toto Wolff said they have invested in new equipment, so that may help them. But the elephant in the room at Mercedes will be Hamilton's departure. Hamilton is all cool. He's looking forward to the last season with the Silver Arrows. Toto Wolff is also looking very professional. He knows that's the move happening. He can't do anything about it. And he knows it was his mistake. It was his team's mistake, not giving Hamilton the car he wanted. So yeah, that's part and parcel of the game for Mercedes. They will have to handle that situation very carefully. A full season of a driver, and a driver like Hamilton, multiple world champion, already telling them that he's going to leave them at the end of the season. It's a tricky situation to handle. And what would be interesting to see is if the W15 is competitive. If it has race winning caliber, or maybe, just maybe, they can challenge for the title. How is Mercedes going to handle that situation? Because Wolff has said George Russell from next year will be their lead driver. So how do they handle it in 2024? If they get competitive, who are they going to prefer? I think that's something they'll again decide on merit between Hamilton or Russell, who gets the priority. But as I said earlier, Mercedes, they need to show performance on track before thinking about these aspects as who they are going to prefer or how are they going to manage their teammate dynamic this year. Last year they had crashes, they had collisions. So Hamilton and Russell this year would be a very feisty pairing if things go south. Toto Wolff will need to ensure that they focus on their goal, on their long-term goals, because their matchup will now directly be against Ferrari. Ferrari are doing better. They are not. They are going to get compared for it. Hamilton moving there. So for obvious reason, it's a direct matchup with Ferrari for them. So let's see how Mercedes performs. Now the champions, Red Bull. The livery is the same as usual, as every year goes, no changes. I would have really liked them taking one of those American race liveries that they used last year. Miami, Kota, Vegas, each of those liveries were really cool. So they could have done something like that, have some sort of elements. But yeah, it's the classic Red Bull livery. But the car is so not. The car is so not the same. Last year, everyone was complaining it's RB18 itself. The RB19 was the RB18. It was an evolution of that car. Yes, we saw much more aggressive upgrades throughout the season. This car, the RB20, is so different. Some Mercedes inspiration there, high shoulders like the W14. And initially, everyone thought there's no side pod inlet. But then looking closely at the darkened area under the side pod, it's sort of a vertical inlet, which we used to see on the old school F1 cars that Schumacher drove in the 90s, the Ferraris and the Williams, all those cars. So it's not something new in F1, but in this ground effect era of cars, that's something new. And if we compare the pictures of this year's Red Bull and last year's Mercedes, the zero pod one that they started with, it looks very similar on the rear end. On that side pod, it looks like they're heading towards having a zero pod. And there have been reports that the in-season upgrades may have a zero pod concept, which is frightening, and at the same time, it sort of gives hope, because if Red Bull falter, which is very unlikely with Adrian Newey present over there, but just in case they falter, then we have got title battle on hand. Because McLaren, Ferrari, Mercedes, Aston, everybody is catching up to their concept. They are catching up to their pace. If Red Bull falter with this new concept, which is the risk, then the battle is on. 2024 would be so much more chaotic. So for now, not exactly zero side pod, but there are reports and there are indicators they may opt for it. And if they make it work, if Adrian Newey makes it work, damn, that would be some crazy scenes. Mercedes would go like, how is this man doing it? They take our concept and they nail it. It's so insane. Newey is cooking with the RB20 this year. He is so cooking. But yeah, most of the car, it was blacked out. Classic Red Bull car launch event, I would say. All the historic stuff shown. They're celebrating 20 years of the team, so quite expected to have that kind of a launch. It was dampened perhaps with Honor's investigation, so they did not do as much of a launch that they might have wanted to. But coming to the car, just to close it off, that launch spec car won't be the car they would race with in Bahrain. They will have changes on that car, different parts, the concept might change, who knows. They might actually run a zero side pod in testing to just gather data, try it out, or they may run it, bring it at a different race. Nothing to give away for now. Most of the concept is same, the suspensions and everything. The front wing does not have a slot gap, so that may change. It's a very basic front wing. Most of the parts on the car were blurred out or blacked out. So yes, things can change on the RB20 as the season begins. The question is, how dominant will they be? And if they fail, who's catching them up? Those are the two big questions. I feel even if they fail, Newey, the Spear Washer, these guys can salvage it like they did in 22. The first few races, poor reliability, and they figured out a way to get that car working, eventually dominating the championship. So yeah, the team looks confident. Verstappen obviously. Even Perez for that matter look confident. Hopefully he'll have a better season. And the thing is that he is not the most vulnerable guy right now at Red Bull in terms of his job. That's Christian Horner. And for unspeakable reasons, he's got into some deep trouble with that investigation. All sorts of rumors about sexual misconduct and everything. Nothing can be said, certainly, before they conclude that investigation. All I would say is going to destabilize the team if Horner loses his job. Because he's been the team boss for 17, 18 years now. So a big shift like that can cause a bit of chaos, and they have got the man to replace him. Jonathan Wheatley, their sporting director, he's the perfect man to replace him. He's perhaps a bit senior to him too, in terms of experience, in terms of age. So that may help to get things under control. But yeah, if the Horner saga solves itself out, Red Bull don't have any sort of tension on their head now. They will mostly nail the season unless someone catches up. It should be closer, hopefully. McLaren, Ferrari, or even Mercedes or Aston, someone closing it up, closing that gap up. Could we have a championship battle? Could we have just a better season with more cars in the fight to win races besides Verstappen? Hopefully, someone closes the gap. But yeah, realistically, Verstappen may win all the races this season if that concept works. And they're once again a second clear of everybody. 30 seconds in the race. There's nothing doing over there. So all car launches done. That's how all the 10 teams stack up before the season begins. Only 10 days remaining, and fingers crossed we'll get a better season this year. Hopefully Red Bull doesn't dominate badly. But yeah, that depends on Max Verstappen if he unlocks his God mode. And that also depends on other teams. McLaren, Ferrari, Mercedes, Aston. Somebody needs to step up from them to challenge Red Bull. The two most likely teams I feel are McLaren and Ferrari. but we'll get an idea when we get to testing in Bahrain. So I'll be doing a season preview, or sort of a testing review, I would say, of how things went in testing, who's looking good, who's sort of having struggles and problems. So that would be next week's episode. Before we get to the first race weekend of 2024, the Bahrain Grand Prix, to see Max Verstappen winning by 30 seconds or 20 seconds. Fingers crossed someone else wins that first race, or we have a battle for the win. But yeah, for now, that's all from my side. Next week, testing review, season preview. Stay tuned till then.